The Godfather remains one of the most defining and transformative films in cinema history. A masterpiece that not only reshaped the gangster genre, but also transcended it to become a cultural phenomenon. More than just a mob movie, it redefined how organized crime was portrayed on screen, elevating the narrative from a simple tale of violence and power to a deeply layered exploration of family, morality, and identity. Prior to Coppola's vision, mobsters in film were often one-dimensional caricatures, but The Godfather gave them humanity, depth, and an internal code of honor. It influenced countless films, TV shows, and novels, becoming a blueprint for future storytelling about crime and power dynamics, from Goodfellas and Casino to The Sopranos, and even non-mafia narratives exploring the corruption of power. Its cast, Marlon Brando, Al Pacino, James Caan, and Robert Duvall, were immortalized by their roles, with Brando's Vito Corleone becoming one of the most iconic characters in cinematic history. Coppola's deliberate shift away from the book's heavier focus on mob gossip, especially the subplot of Johnny Fontaine mirroring Frank Sinatra, allowed the story to become much more than a Hollywood exposé. Instead, he centered the narrative on the family itself, highlighting the generational struggle between tradition and modernity, duty and personal freedom, and the inevitability of transformation under the weight of legacy. At its heart, The Godfather is a tragedy about Michael Corleone's reluctant yet inevitable transformation into the very thing he once sought to avoid. When we first meet him, Michael is the clean-cut war hero, the good son who distances himself from the family business, believing he can live outside its shadow. But as the story unfolds, circumstances pull him closer to the dark heart of the Corleone empire. His journey reflects the film's overarching theme that one cannot fully escape their heritage and that power, once embraced, corrodes the soul. This transformation is underscored by the film's rich use of religious imagery and symbolism. Coppola weaves Catholic rituals throughout the narrative, beginning with a wedding, moving through funerals, and culminating in a baptism. The baptism scene is one of the most hauntingly powerful sequences in cinema, where Michael renounces Satan and all his works as godfather to his sister's child, while simultaneously orchestrating a series of brutal murders that consolidate his power. This juxtaposition between sacred vows and sinful deeds encapsulates the moral contradictions that run through the film. A family that prays in church while spilling blood in the streets, a man who becomes the protector of his family but destroys his soul in the process. Through these themes, The Godfather becomes not just a story of crime, but a meditation on the corrupting nature of power, the fragile line between duty and morality, and the inevitability of becoming what you once feared. It is this duality, the intimate story of a family wrapped in the grand tragedy of human ambition, that cements the film's place as a timeless classic. The Godfather's brilliance lies not only in its storytelling, but also in its meticulous visual language and layered symbolism, which deepen the film's themes of power, morality, and inevitability. Coppola and cinematographer Gordon Willis, often called the Prince of Darkness, crafted a visual style that perfectly matched the moral ambiguity of the Corleone world. Much of the film is deliberately shrouded in deep shadows, with characters often half-lit, suggesting they exist between worlds, caught between legitimacy and criminality, between family loyalty and ruthless business decisions. This darkness isn't just an aesthetic choice, but a reflection of how the Corleones operate in the shadows, away from the scrutiny of the law and the public eye. Even Vito Corleone's face is often obscured in shadow, giving him an almost mythic, godlike presence, emphasizing the idea that true power hides, rather than flaunts itself. Beyond lighting, the film also incorporates recurring visual motifs that subtly enrich the story, most famously the presence of oranges. These bright, seemingly harmless fruits consistently appear before moments of death or violence. Vito buying oranges before he's gunned down, Sonny near an orange billboard before his assassination, and others handling oranges before their demise. While cinematographer Willis later dismissed it as a practical way to add color to drab scenes, the pattern creates an ominous foreshadowing that fans continue to dissect and appreciate. Another powerful symbol is the puppet logo in the opening credits, a hand controlling strings above the title. This image represents Vito Corleone's manipulation of the world around him, how he pulls the strings of politicians, judges, and ordinary people to maintain control. It also speaks to the larger theme of fate, suggesting that everyone in this world is a puppet to either power or circumstance. Coppola even incorporated religious imagery to elevate the mobsters beyond mere criminals, tying their actions to larger ideas of sin, redemption, and damnation. Weddings, funerals, and baptisms punctuate the story, placing sacred rituals alongside acts of violence to highlight the contradictions within the Corleone family's sense of honor. Equally important are the adaptation choices that shaped how audiences perceive the characters. Mario Puzo's novel dedicated far more time to the character of Johnny Fontane, a thinly veiled parody of Frank Sinatra's alleged mob connections in Hollywood. However, Coppola intentionally minimized this subplot, relegating Fontane's story to a minor thread so he could focus on the deeper, more universal dynamics of the Corleone family. By doing so, he shifted the narrative away from being simply about mafia gossip and celebrity scandal, transforming it into an intimate, multi-generational tragedy. The mobsters in Coppola's vision are not flat, one-note villains. They are fathers, brothers, and sons with moral codes and vulnerabilities, making their choices more hauntingly human. This nuanced portrayal changed the public's perception of organized crime in popular culture, giving it a seductive allure and a tragic complexity it hadn't had before. Through symbolism, visual storytelling, and selective adaptation, Coppola elevated The Godfather from a crime saga to a meditation on power, morality, and the inevitability of legacy. The creation of The Godfather was as dramatic and complex as the story it told. Behind the scenes, Francis Ford Coppola faced enormous pressure from Paramount, which initially doubted his vision. The studio resisted casting both Marlon Brando and the then unknown Al Pacino, fearing Brando's reputation as a difficult actor and believing Pacino was too soft-spoken and inexperienced to carry the weight of Michael Corleone's transformation. Studio executives even tried to fire Coppola multiple times, convinced he was too young and unproven to handle such a sprawling production. But Coppola fought relentlessly, knowing that Brando's presence was essential to grounding Vito Corleone with quiet authority rather than overt menace. Brando, despite his fading career and notorious behavior, delivered a performance so iconic it redefined his legacy. To embody the aging Don, he used method techniques, stuffing his cheeks with cotton during his audition, and later wearing a custom mouthpiece on set to give Vito the bulldog-like look that became instantly recognizable. Meanwhile, Pacino's subtle, internalized approach to Michael initially alarmed the studio, who thought he was too restrained compared to James Caan's fiery Sonny. It was only after they saw the pivotal restaurant assassination scene that they realized Pacino's quiet intensity was exactly what the role needed. Complicating matters further, the real-life mafia allegedly had its eyes on the production. The Italian-American Civil Rights League, suspected of mob ties, objected to the film and pressured Coppola and the studio. Producers received threats, and one even had his car riddled with bullets. As a compromise to ease tensions, the filmmakers agreed to avoid using the word mafia altogether, and instead referred to the organization as the family. A subtle but meaningful change that helped appease those who feared the movie would reinforce harmful stereotypes. Ironically, many mobsters later embraced the film, praising its authenticity, and even adopting its language and style into their own lives. Beneath the surface of its production challenges, The Godfather also carried a profound historical and political resonance. While it was set in the 1940s and 1950s, Coppola used it to comment on America's turbulent post-war decades. The film mirrored the nation's loss of idealism following World War II, a period when Americans had believed in the righteousness of their government and the moral clarity of their victories. By the time the film was released in the 1970s, that faith had eroded through the assassination of JFK, the Vietnam War, and the unfolding Watergate scandal. Coppola subtly draws parallels between the mafia and the government, suggesting that both wield power through corruption, intimidation, and carefully crafted public images. Vito Corleone's refusal to enter the narcotics trade is a key moment that reflects this understanding. He recognizes that drugs would draw unwanted attention from politicians and police, jeopardizing the delicate balance of influence and respect he has built. This decision underscores the film's larger commentary on capitalism and power. The mob is simply another business empire, operating in the same morally gray territory as legitimate corporations or political institutions. Through its production struggles and layered political subtext, The Godfather became more than a story about crime. It became a mirror reflecting America's own moral contradictions. The Godfather is filled with unforgettable scenes and subtle details that reward careful viewing, making it a film that reveals new layers with every rewatch. Among its most iconic moments is the chilling discovery of a horse's severed head in Hollywood mogul Jack Woltz's bed, a scene so shocking it became one of the most famous in cinematic history. To achieve authenticity, the filmmakers used a real horse head obtained from a dog food factory, shocking actor John Marley in the moment since he wasn't told the prop would be real. Then there's the brutal toll booth ambush of Sonny Corleone, a sequence meticulously staged with over 140 squibs exploding on James Caan's body and 200 bullet holes drilled into the car to emphasize the overkill. This violent eruption serves as both a narrative turning point and a stark reminder of how impulsiveness can lead to doom. Another unforgettable scene is Michael's restaurant assassination of Sollozzo and McCluskey, which perfectly captures his internal conflict and gradual embrace of the family's violent legacy. The suspense builds through the sounds of a distant train, symbolizing fate barreling forward, until Michael finally emerges from the bathroom and executes the two men. Beyond these key moments, Coppola sprinkled the film with hidden details and real-life mob references, from posters and props that foreshadow betrayals to oranges strategically appearing before acts of violence. Even small visual cues, like fish motifs surrounding Luca Brasi before his death, enrich the film's tapestry of foreshadowing and symbolism. These iconic scenes are not just for shock value. They drive the evolution of characters and reveal the betrayals that ultimately shaped the Corleone family's destiny. At the heart of it is Michael's transformation, which begins with him as a reluctant war hero who insists he's separate from his family's criminal world. But after his father is nearly killed, Michael steps into the shadows, orchestrating murders and outmaneuvering rivals until he fully embraces the role of the Godfather. This transformation reaches its devastating conclusion in the final scene, where his wife Kay watches as Michael coldly denies involvement in Carlo's murder, only for the door to shut on her, both literally and metaphorically, sealing her exclusion from the truth. Betrayal weaves through every character arc. Tessio, once a trusted ally, is revealed as a traitor when he tries to set Michael up for an ambush, a moment signaled by small, quiet hints before the final reveal. Carlo, Connie's abusive husband, conspires with Barzini to have Sonny killed, only to meet his own end at Michael's hands after his confession. Sonny himself, despite his loyalty and love for his family, is undone by his hot-headed impulsiveness, rushing to Connie's aid without thinking and falling into a trap. Each betrayal is deeply personal, and each death carries weight, showing how loyalty within the family is both sacred and precarious. These character arcs, intertwined with symbolic set pieces and precise storytelling, create a narrative where every action, every visual clue, and every emotional beat contributes to the inevitable tragedy of Michael's rise. Michael Corleone's rise to power is the core tragedy of The Godfather, charting his descent from a decorated war hero determined to stay out of the family business into a calculating, ruthless mob boss who sacrifices his morality for absolute control. His transformation begins in earnest after the near assassination of his father, Vito Corleone. Initially, Michael appears to be the one Corleone's son who might break the cycle of crime. He is educated, composed, and engaged to Kay, an outsider who represents a normal life. But when Vito is gunned down in the street, Michael is pulled into the darkness he once resisted. His pivotal moment comes in the restaurant scene, where he kills Sollozzo, the rival gangster behind the attempt on his father's life, and McCluskey, a corrupt police captain. This act is both shocking and symbolic, marking the point of no return for Michael as he commits himself to violence in the name of family loyalty. Forced into exile in Sicily, Michael gains a fleeting glimpse of peace and love. But even this is ripped away when his Sicilian wife Apollonia is killed in a car bombing meant for him. By the time he returns to America, he is no longer the hesitant son, but a man hardened by loss, betrayal, and the realization that survival demands cold calculation. His complete metamorphosis is sealed during the iconic baptism sequence, where Michael stands as godfather to his sister's child, while simultaneously ordering the brutal murders of all his enemies. This juxtaposition of sacred vows with orchestrated slaughter encapsulates the moral contradiction of Michael's new role. He becomes both protector and destroyer, a man who gains ultimate power at the cost of his soul. This haunting rise to power contributed to The Godfather's lasting legacy as one of the greatest films ever made. It not only captivated audiences with its gripping story and unforgettable characters, but also reshaped the cultural landscape of cinema. Upon its release, the film earned critical acclaim and multiple Academy Awards, including Best Actor for Marlon Brando's unforgettable portrayal of Vito Corleone. In true Brando fashion, he declined the Oscar and sent activist Sachin Littlefeather to the ceremony to protest Hollywood's treatment of Native Americans, adding another layer of notoriety to the film's history. The Godfather went on to become one of the few films ever to top IMDb's rankings of the greatest movies of all time, joining a select group that includes The Shawshank Redemption and The Dark Knight. Its influence extended far beyond the screen, inspiring sequels, graphic novels, academic studies, and countless parodies in popular culture. Even real-life mobsters admired its authenticity and often quoted its lines, blurring the line between fiction and reality. The film's iconic imagery, quotes like, "I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse," and its complex portrayal of loyalty and power solidified it as a cinematic masterpiece. More than just a crime drama, The Godfather became a timeless story of family, ambition, and the cost of power, a film whose impact continues to echo across generations of storytellers and audiences alike.